Once upon a time, ages ago, in a movie theater, my friends, my former girlfriend, and I each bought a ticket to a film called I Now Pronounce You, Chuck and Larry. You might know it as a comedy starring Adam Sandler and Kevin James. I had no particular expectations. Back then, there was some really shallow stuff coming out, but not in the same way as some of the drivel they churn out these days. The movie's humor was alright, its peaks amused me, and it made some points, and had some eye candy. Overall, I had a decent time, until I noticed something. Something terrible. To me, even terrifying back then. It was a cameo someone made. I don't remember who it was. Some pretty well known celebrity, I'm sure. But that wasn't terrifying in and on itself. No pointless slapstick or grossness, no badly told joke, no context exploitation either. Just a not so low key appearance of a random, well known person. One that doesn't make you go, oh, I get that reference, but rather, oh, that guy's in this movie too? Well, what shook me to the core was the audience's reaction. Uninhibited, lung bursting laughter. Don't get me wrong, I didn't have a suddenly developed burst of geliophobia. Nonetheless, I felt a creeping dread rising up in the back half of my body as a crumbling hope began running down my fingers like two fistfuls of sand, pushing me into a deep existential concern for the art of comedy. Was I ready to accept this future? One where, as a piece of media, you simply introduce a random item into a scene and that is enough to pass for comedy? Would all my analysis of humor have been for naught? Would it all be replaced by a marginally more sophisticated version of peekaboo? Has idiocracy grown beyond the point of no return already? What a terrible future my overly sensitive younger self had envisioned. And in regards to comedy on the big and small screen, it wasn't that far off. I'm glad I eventually got over that shock by running out of emotions. Comedy isn't dead, but it's very much flatlining with a few hiccups of skill here and there. And now I get to watch the joking craft rise out of its ashes, only to someday see it kill my hope anew. Still, there's some mystery to this phenomenon that warrants unfolding. Why did that work as a joke in the first place? Did I miss a reference after all? Was it just one stupid person who infected the whole crowd with laughter? I guess if I boil it down, it all comes down to small quantities of relatability. To this day, that's my best explanation for what happened at the movies. It is the common denominator after all. As soon as something clicks in your mind, you have a reaction. Be it a twist within the Gordian knot of comedy, or the mundane process of pointing and naming objects like a 1-year-old. As we consume media, movie stars become, despite their obvious distance, something familiar. Familiar mundane objects to point out. You can see that at meet and greets, for example, when some fans treat famous people like old friends despite being total strangers. Such familiarity was probably the sole context given to the audience, in this joke of a joke. The movie did very little for the setup. It basically simply existed, entirely relied on the audience to have already built the context for themselves through sheer relating to a single piece of information. I know this person. To me, that's not a punchline, it's a part of one. Back then, I guess my sensibility were hurt because I usually try very hard to consider all graspable poetry in, well, everything really. And there it was, this void with no context to wrap the joke around. Comedy has it especially easy compared to drama or horror in that regard because it allows for simpler but also for way more numerous points to occur in way higher density, since it doesn't necessarily have to rely on pauses or tension. But for all forms of entertainment goes, the biggest sin you can commit is emptiness. Screw the offensiveness of Holocaust jokes and dead baby puns. A joke where something happens and you learn nothing. To me, that is offensive humor. From that fateful night on, I practically knew that an awful new trend was to be created. A soon to come barrage of scenes that throw random feces at you in hopes that some would stick to the blades of your interpretational fan. Mere settings are now promoted to jokes. Haven't you seen it too? Not only are old jokes simply reused, but they're also reduced. Recognizing yourself in an actor's normal people costume shouldn't be enough. I mean, it is natural to relate to things similar to you. And in a social context, laughter is an expression of relation. You laugh about subject matters that are close to your perceptions of your job, your family, your fandom, and people that somehow sound like you. It's all part of your disgusting narcissism, and it's neither okay nor against the law. Yet. Well, who am I to dictate the content of an art piece? So, what is my implied proposition? Is there even one? Am I advocating for some kind of quality checks in funny movies, pictures, and text? Am I somehow against the concept of relatability in comedy? Should people now laugh about things they don't understand at all? I'm not saying that. After all, I'm in the same trap of rampant narcissism. No, what I suggest is merely to let the phrase art is subjective not discourage you from investigating an art piece deeper. Identify and formulate what you found funny or tragic and why you did that. I'd never subscribe to the saying, explanation kills the art, except if you leave it at a single one.